Okay. Now let's just wait for this window. Okay, and now that's ready. And then we want pop out chat. We want to see live chat. And we want to put this over here and do that. Cool. All right, I think we're all good. Let me see here. We've got morning from Chicago. Greetings from Central Finland. Checking in from the deep south of Kanukistan. Suppose I should turn on the camera right there, right? It's a good idea. I hope you folks are having a good day so far. Seems only yesterday when 5th was the new hotness, but that was 15 years ago, and you're not wrong. Excuse me. Good morning from always too sunny Washington, D.C. It was crazy bright and sunny this morning, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I thought it was supposed to rain, though. And then I was sitting here kind of like having some breakfast, petting Margot, and looking at the lady outside with her dog, and all of a sudden it just got windy and dark over the course of 60 seconds. And then that lady went in the house, and then it rained real hard for 3 or 4 minutes, and now it's getting slightly brighter, and the wind has stopped and the rain has stopped. It's maybe sprinkling. So I don't know. One of those little quick kind of like little radar kind of, as it goes on the weather radar, just kind of goes like that. Just a little strip that goes past. So that's fun. Let's see here. Rain has returned to Edinburgh. We've been needing rain for quite some time. Yeah, although everything is brown. Let's see here. Sweltering Birmingham. That does not sound fun. Morning from Calgary, heading off to GameCon Canada soon. Wish you were there. I kind of wish I was there as well. I agree. Although I'm glad I'm home because I had a lot of things to get done, so that's been helpful too. Would have been very stressful to do both, I suppose. Good morning from Markham, building Terminators from the Leviathan box set. They're a fun build. I enjoy those guys. I've painted and finished 5 of them. Diablo 4 servers crashing last night was a coincidental blessing. It was clear to me it was a sign to unbox my Leviathan and start building. Sometimes the world does that to you, or for you, you know what I mean? Totally makes sense. Good morning from Saskatchewan. Nice. I always enjoy saying Saskatchewan. Good morning from Albuquerque. Albuquerque is also fun to say. South Haven, Michigan. Sounds nice, but it's not just like fun to say, but I appreciate you being here. San Diego, Clearwater, Florida. The Noob Painter dabs into chat. How you doing? Greetings from the Netherlands. Currently putting some paint on the Age of Sigmar Tzeentch Endless Spells. Nice. Jonesboro, Illinois. Morning from Philly. More rain they forecast, the sunnier it gets. Well, give it time. Bavaria. You're real quiet. Is that just me? Might just be you, I think. Germany, Daytona Beach, Townsville, Australia. It's already hot. It's supposed to be cooler now here for a little bit, which will be nice. Sunny England, watching as I finish off the bases on some ghouls for Rangers of Shadowdeep onto the Skeleton Knights next. Nice. Hi from Taiwan. It's nuclear here. Ooh, that's not good. It's a scorching London. Yeah, that's not good either. Marked safe from Leviathan, but I still kind of want those data cards that will be obsolete in about 3 months. What's wrong with me? It's just FOMO. I didn't get any of the data cards. Like they sent me the box of Leviathan, but that was it. And I think that other people, especially people who do a lot of like battle reports and stuff like that, probably got cards instead of just PDFs. I was sent PDFs early that had my name printed all over them, in like a watermark kind of thing. So I couldn't like, put them on Reddit or whatever, that kind of stuff, which is fine. That's the way that these things are generally done, is that they send them out with, your name on them so that you don't want to share them. But now the regular ones are out. And I'll be honest, like the concept of buying a pack of cards, which is probably going to get tweaked in about literally 20 minutes. I'm fine with them being PDFs. But I know some people really like cards. So, good luck. Yeah, I don't know. Like I've already heard there's been a bunch of changes and tweaks and things like that, which you always have with a game this large with this many armies going out to this many, I'm assuming millions of people. You know, people since our game, Majestic 13 has launched, people have gone through and found little things where they're like, well, if this and this and this happens, then this doesn't work. And we're like, yeah, that's one of those things that missed all the testing and stuff like that. And, you know, you're going to see that writ large, obviously, with something like Warhammer 40,000, ostensibly one of the largest tabletop games out there. So, yeah. Hawaii, 4 a.m. Oh, good morning. Hot and sunny Surrey. Let's see here. Portland, Massachusetts, where it is muggy. Playing tabletop, we're running a big 40K tournament. Well, that's cool. Nice. Loosely collected says my birthday's tomorrow. Tried to get some gaming set up, but I doubt it. So I'll probably paint tomorrow. Well, that still sounds like a pretty good birthday. I want those data cards too. I forgot to pick them up. I don't even know if my local shop ordered them. My local shop got 9 copies of Leviathan. Here's a question. Did anybody here... Was anyone here unable to get Leviathan? I know there was a lot of consternation and gnashing of teeth about how, like, well, you know, everything from Kill Team has sold out instantly, and you know, recently, the last, I don't know, 9 months. So obviously, Leviathan's going to sell it instantly, and they'll be able to get it. Has anybody had a problem getting Leviathan? I know like I said, my local store got 9 copies, and I heard a rumor that the local store across town got 201 copies, which seems like a lot more than a person might need in a town of 75,000 people, but I don't know. So yeah, I don't know that for sure, but that's the rumor that I have heard. Managed to not get Leviathan. Don't regret it. Points and index list push me to Horus Heresy. Sure. Hello from Omaha. Nice. In Lexington. First live show. Don't let me down, man. I'll try not to. Good afternoon from Budapest. Printing and painting Necromunda all afternoon and evening. Nice. I bought the previous Space Marine Combat Patrol in prep for the new game mode. It got replaced by Leviathan. Wish that they had more been clear with that info. Yeah, I think that honestly would have been really nice. It should they should have been like, look, well, there's 2 things they could have done. One thing is they could have just been like, look, these 2 boxes, 3 boxes technically, Tyranids, Space Marines, and Necrons. They're not going to be having rules for Combat Patrol. The other option is that they could have actually made rules for them as well. You know, make the rules for the Leviathan, the Tyranids, and make rules for the Leviathan Space Marine Combat Patrols. Great. But also put out sheets there for those previous boxes. I don't know why they didn't. I can see why they didn't kind of with Necrons, because the Necrons had a flyer in it, which I've talked about a bunch of times. So I was always like wary. I'm like, they're either going to change the rules drastically to make the flyer more of a skimmer, or I don't know what they're going to do. And as it turned out, what they're going to do is just use a bunch of models from Indominus, and that box is no longer a thing. But that's the one thing I'm so far not real happy about with Combat Patrol, is the way that they kind of left those boxes hanging. The other thing I'm not real happy about right now, honestly, and this may change, hopefully it will change, is that in the Leviathan book, which I don't have anywhere near me right now, but in the Leviathan book, there's an entire section about Combat Patrol, including 6 missions. That better get released as a PDF. The fact that it hasn't yet is a little worrying, but that hopefully will get released as some sort of PDF, so people, because otherwise, if it's like, because they've said time and time again, Combat Patrol, minus the boxes, will be free. Now, again, I still think at some point they will release a book with special fancy add-on junk, or they'll put stuff into a White Dwarf or whatever. But so far, everything has been free except for this thing with the 6 missions and whatever. And so hopefully they'll release that soon. We will see. I'm chuffed that I finally finished my last 2 mechs in the Battletech box. So that's cool. I like the word chuffed sometimes. I don't use that enough. I think it's because I would sound very English when I used it, and I'm not English, and so that would be weird. Any word on when the 40K datasheet downloads will be released? Over the last several weeks, they've been out. All the 40K datasheet downloads. You just go to they're on the website. If you go to warhammercommunity.com, and up in the top there's a thing that says like downloads, and then you go from there. You'll find them. Yeah, all that stuff's been out now for at least a week. Unless there's something else you're talking about. But yeah, the data sheets, the points, like all that stuff, even the combat patrol stuff is out now too. Do you like Tyranids? Planning on using them as a combat patrol? I don't know. I've been playing against Sam's combat patrol of Tyranids, and they're pretty cool. I think I have to sneeze. But I don't know that I'm going to... I've got so many other things planned, I'm not sure that I'm going to do them at any time soon. I think there's more likely a chance I'm going to do... Margot just went into a little box down there. There's more likely I'm going to do Necrons before I do Tyranids, actually. Because I have half of the warriors already built and painted. I have the Scorpec Destroyers already built and painted. The leader guy with the Tachyon arrow is built, but not painted. And I have the Doomstalker kit already bought because I was going to use it for something else. So got my Majestic 13 book. This is going to be fun. Love the aesthetic. Another hit from Starling Badger. Well, it's very nice of you to say, Grendel. I appreciate that. Lots of copies of Leviathan available in Canada. Sure. Played a game of 10th, and while cards would be useful, it isn't necessary. At least they are only $18 to $25 per pack. Oof. Well, I mean, I suppose it, yeah. Like the Space Marine pack has got to be like that thick. It's a lot of stuff going on. Could have gotten the box from my local FLGS as well as online, but passed on both options. Sure. Got the Tyranid part for $60. Nice. How do you feel about the mission decks? Also, thanks for making your Snarling Badger games. Well, I appreciate that. Mission decks, you mean though where you like pick like here's the deployment and here's the thing? And I've always kind of liked that stuff because it does. The only ones that I've got is the stuff that came in Leviathan. So I like that stuff because it kind of randomizes things and it makes things a little bit sort of cat shenanigans going on directly underneath me. Thank you. Yeah, but yeah, so I like that kind of stuff. I think it's fun. A local GW store had a huge pile of Leviathan after everyone picked up their pre-orders. Yeah, I think that it's going to be... I mean, people are going to buy it, but I don't think it's... I know a lot of people were very concerned it was going to sell out instantly, and I think that one of the reasons that everything else was low in production is because they were just cranking out Leviathan for literally probably the last year, maybe longer, just like nonstop, like, okay, we're going to make a little bit of... kill team stuff here, and then we're gonna switch everything out and start and continue to make Leviathan. We'll see. Now it's getting sunny outside again. Weird. I pre-ordered, but my local store got 50 for general release. Wow. Why doesn't anyone play Lon in Warcry? Lon. What the heck is Lon? Legion of Nurgle? Legion of Nagash. Is that what it is? Oh yeah, Bone Boys. There you go. Sure. Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. A local store in Huntsville posted a pic of a really large stack, probably 40 or 50 copies. Wow. Currently sculpting and printing Leviathan compatible conversion bits. Nice. Building some Marines tonight and old Eldar to use as combat patrol. Nice. I just noticed that my closed captioning is on for some reason over on my screen over there. That's weird. And no, and there. Did you look to see if he was breathing? A little bit. Yeah, me too. Diesel's been very sleepy this morning. Yeah, he seems okay. Warhammer booth at GameCon had the Kill Team Critical Ops card pack, so I snagged those right away. They had a stack of Leviathan for sale too. Nice. If I play 40K again, it'll be version of 2nd edition where I got started building and playing. Nice. Let's see here. This is strange. They released boarding action PDF, so hopefully Combat Patrol as well. Yeah, like I said, like they've released the Combat Patrol data sheets. Those came out sometime earlier this week. Tuesday, maybe? I don't know. So those are all available. And the rules that you use for Combat Patrol are the normal core rules, the regular 40K 60-page rules or whatever, which that also had come out, the week previous. But like I said, in the Leviathan book, right after the core rules section, in the kind of the middle of the book, there's a Combat Patrol section, which there's no specific rules per se. I think you could just play Combat Patrol normally, but there are 6 missions in there, and it would be nice maybe to have those. So, Tyranny Combat Patrol had the old Termagant models, which was funny after the Leviathan preview showing off the new ones. Yeah, no, the old ones. That's why I was like, if they're going to get rid of something, I figured it was going to be Tyranids and Necrons. I didn't think it was going to be Space Marines, though. I was kind of surprised by that. So, let's see here. Any thoughts on Gloomhaven miniatures? I've been painting them. I started painting them on stream on Twitch on Friday. What's today? Sunday? Yes. So a couple days ago. They sent me 6 of them, and I'm going to be painting them on Twitch for the next couple of weeks or so. And yeah, so far they're real. For board game miniatures specifically, they're actually quite nice. They've got a real stiffness to them. Sometimes board game miniatures can be real bendy. Like you'll have like a guy will have a sword and it'll be bent or whatever, you know, and you have to try to like heat it up and try to bend it back. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. These are real nice and stiff, so that's really good too. And the detail's pretty good too. I mean, now it's not like Games Workshop detail, but it's also, you don't have to build these guys. They just, you take them out of the package, you prime them, and you start going. And so far they've been real nice. So yeah. Excuse me. Let's see here. Good morning, Mr. President. Is the Majestic 13? Oh, I don't know about that. Pre-ordered Leviathan directly from GW, and the tracking info says it's still on their warehouse, waiting to be picked up by UPS. Well, that's a bummer. Have you tried the Combat Patrol game mode yet? Yeah, Sam and I have played 2 games. I was thinking maybe we were going to try to play again yesterday, but it didn't. I think he had stuff going on. So I was mainly just building my next Combat Patrol, which is Guard. So I was doing that a good portion of yesterday and doing a couple other things that I had to get done anyway. And yeah, but no, we've been enjoying it. I want to build an actual 3-dimensional board to use too. And I have an old neoprene mat, which I think is 4x6, but for some reason the edges got weird and crunchy. So I want to trim that down too and use that as well. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, no, it's been very cool. And now I've worked on some new terrain too. So we got that going too. Leviathan is the new Dominion apparently, which is good. I was thinking of getting a second copy, but it's looking like I'll be able to buy individual models to add, especially without Harmagons. Nice. Greetings from Germany. Did Necrons get a new Combat Patrol? It's not available yet, but they show it in the Leviathan box. So it is his name Trazon? I don't know. He's the guy that's got the Tachyon arrow. It's like a single shot once per game, and it has like a 72-inch range, and it's like AP -5 and does a bunch of damage, and it's like strength 15 or something crazy like that. It's a monstrous like range weapon, but it's the only shot he has, and he can only do it once per game. So he's the leader. There's a Doomstalker, which is the tall kind of like War of the Worlds thing with the big gun on his head. I think there's 3 of the Scorpack destroyers, and then there's like 10 warriors. I think that's right. So yeah, so basically it's, other than the Doomstalker, it's all just stuff from Indomitus. So if you had the Indomitus box, you could build pretty much everything except for the Doomstalker. Greetings from Germany. Oh, I just read that. Sorry. I'm going fishing for a week. Wow. I'm going to bring along something to work on. Gotcha. Getting ready to go sweat at work. The AC is busted. No, that doesn't sound fun at all. I think you're kidding. Have you tried out the new 40K app? I have not. I don't know. I should probably take a look at it and see, but I've heard already a bunch of people who are like, meh. And also it sounds like they're going to charge for it. Honestly, list building is not that hard now. Really. You know what I mean? It used to be, because of all the nickel and diming with all the like, well, if you change this weapon, then this happens. If you do this, and then you get this price and all that kind of stuff. Nowadays, it's just really easy to be like, these are the points. Done. You know what I mean? Yeah, because you don't, for those of you that haven't, seen any of the new points and stuff like that, the way it used to be with 40K is you would pay for a squad, and then if you wanted like, well, yeah, but this guy's going to have a plasma gun. Well, plasma gun costs 10 extra points. Well, this guy's going to have a flamethrower. Well, that costs 5 extra points or whatever. And you got nickeled and dimed on all the bits. Now you pay the price for the squad, and then there are limitations on the way you can build. Like, if you have a squad of 5, you can only take 1 plasma gun or 1, flamer or 1 melta, but you can't take 2 or, all that kind of stuff. So it'll tell you on the card, it'll be like, this is the way you can build, but you don't get charged extra for your weapons. So if you decide not to use those weapons, cool, but you still pay the same amount of points. Now, some people are angry because the squad will have a price for 5 models or a price for 10 models, for example. Will you be like, yeah, but what if I have 8? Well, then you pay for 10. And you're like, yeah, but I got 2 less guys. I shouldn't have to pay for them. Well, you should probably get 2 more guys, I guess, is part of the point. That's a whole nother episode by itself. That's fine. Though for me, frankly, I like having the points be simplified. So I've already built, on paper, well, not on my laptop, I have built 3 different 1,000-point armies using combat patrols that I'm working on or that I've already worked on as a basis, and then expanding on them. Like, I'm going to have a Blood Angels 1,000-point army. That's going to be my Blood Angels combat patrol, which is not yet in progress, but will be. And then the Leviathan Space Marines, which I painted as Blood Angels. So I'll be able to take them and the combat patrol and throw in like maybe 1 extra thing, and then boom, 1,000 points. I think I'm going to put in a Death Company Dreadnought because I've always wanted to paint one of those. And then I'm going to have eventually a 1,000-point guard army, because I already have all the stuff I need. It's the 1,000-point, or it's the combat patrol, and then just a bunch of stuff that's already on my shelves, strangely enough. I did have to buy like 1 HQ guy just because I thought he was cool and he had a big power fist. So, and then what was the other 1,000-point list? Oh, then just regular Space Marines, which were dudes that I had built back in 8th and then never actually painted. They were in a box. So I started going through there, and I've like found I need to add a captain, but otherwise everything else is done, like built and ready to go. And even the bases are textured and everything. So I was like, all right, cool. So, but building them is very easy now. So the whole concept of the app, I don't know, it's whatever. But the fact that it sounds like once the codices start coming out, the data sheets aren't going to be necessarily free, or maybe they will. Who's to say? I can't tell anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I should take a look at it, but I haven't yet, because when it first came out, all of a sudden I started seeing a lot of people who were complaining, and it just kind of was like, meh, I kind of don't care then. Good morning from Rhode Island. How you doing? I'm hearing the latest incarnation of Age of Sigmar is getting unwieldy. I'm not a fan of the 3rd edition. It's a little bit too much. Our FLGS got 100 copies. Wow. Local game store got 60 copies of it and held a mid-release combat patrol tournament. By the end of the tournament at 7 a.m., they'd sold through 30 or 40 copies. Nice. I don't know, frankly, that I think that they made so much. I don't know that it's going to be a Dominion kind of situation, because I still know plenty of stores that are sitting on copies of Dominion. To be fair, if you're lucky, sometimes you walk into a store, you're still going to find a copy of Indomitus. So, it depends. Is the end for firstborn in sight? Any guesses about that? There's plenty of firstborn data sheets in the Space Marine stuff. So, and also not even just Space Marine. I was like looking at the Blood Angel stuff. I mean, like there's Death Company intercessors, but there's also just regular Death Company, and so which are firstborn. So yeah, it doesn't seem like they're going anywhere yet, but eventually maybe. I don't know. Like, I'm not super interested in doing firstborn anymore, because they're just really like, I don't know. The modeling is not. I just prefer painting and building Primaris now, is the case. So yeah. Let's see here. Kind of bummed with the new NIDs in the box. Not overly impressed with the sculpts. I don't know. I think they're pretty cool. I mean, like, the Termagants aren't a huge departure. They're cleaner. I think they're better. They're a little bit better shaped, but they're not like a crazy huge departure. But the rest of the models, I think, are quite good. Prey Shock, how you doing? Putting together my first Invictor tactical war suit this morning, and man, this thing has a lot of parts. Yeah. I've been putting together, like I said, I put together some guard yesterday, and I'm amazed. Like, do we have to have a front and back to each torso? Is that necessary on a guy who's this tall? Like, is that like their legs are separate? Each front and back of the torso are separate. I'm not sure. I think what's going on, it's one of two things, I think, about what's going on here. Number one is they are finding that if they make each model take up more parts, then the width, if you look at the I don't have a sprue anywhere near me, but this is a sprue, right? If you look at the sprue from the side like this, I feel like they're trying to limit how high they are so that they can fit more sprues in a smaller box, right? So if you make it so that some of these pieces are bigger than the sprue's bigger, and then you can't stack them as easily or something like that. The other option, and I thought about this last night, is that maybe they're trying to make it so maybe it's easier to make more pieces but not have to go as deep into the mold, because these molds are made by grinding out the shape with the crazy robot arm with these incredibly tiny little diamond tipped little drill bit thingies and whatnot and all that kind of jazz. So I'm wondering if it's cheaper to make the thing take up more model pieces than to make it, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to get as far in or something. Like, I don't know, but I'm just telling you right now, every guardsman is at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces base, which is kind of weird. I don't know. Like, I don't know why the torsos need to be 2 pieces, and I don't know why the legs need to be 2 pieces. Yeah, I don't know. It drives me a little nuts building it for sure. Let's see here. Datasheet part of the app is quite nice. Army building is pretty useless, or rather superfluous. I like the word superfluous. I don't know. Yeah, I like, for me, the data sheets on my phone are like, what I should do is I should try it on my iPad. That's probably the way I should look at it, to be perfectly honest. Reason they redid the Necron Combat Patrol is that boarding actions will use Combat Patrol. One thing that's giving me hope is that these are just indexes. They could fix the squad size issue with the codex. I mean, I hope that a little bit, I kind of hope they don't. I don't want them, like, that's not the way that they do it in Age of Sigmar. Like, Age of Sigmar is like, you either build it this way or you build it that way, you know? You either have 5 or 10, or you either have 10 or 20. And if you want to do 15, great, but you're going to pay for 20. And I think that's been working out well for them. Those folks don't seem to have a huge problem with it. And I think that Games Workshop is taking a look at, they always take a look at what's going well in one of their games and go, cool, let's take that piece and put it in this other game. They do that all the time. It's just a constant sort of leapfroggy sort of thing that they do, you know? And I think that, I don't know, it'll be real interesting to see. Like, again, I have a tendency to build the models as the numbers, you know, the way that they come in the box, and those kind of generally have a tendency to match how they do the points. But I really don't want them to go back and start nickeling and diming for the weapons, because I don't like that. That would be a real bummer, because I'm like, at any time, if I'm given the option to take a plasma pistol, I'm going to take a plasma pistol. They're fun to paint, they're awesome, and they're cool. So there you go. Those are 3 things right there. They're both awesome and cool. That's very important. Let's see. It sounds like there are too many cooks in the kitchen at GW. Well, it's a big, giant, multinational corporation. So that's how all of them work. Dominion has gotten so cheap, I purchased a box just to paint. Well, that's fun. There's some really awesome models in there. Vince and I were just talking about that. Afternoon from a hot Puckle Church in Bristol. Puckle Church is fun to say as well. Hello from Japan. First time watching. This is in a long time. Well, that's good to hear, Brian. Leviathan's an awesome sounding game, but CGL seems to not really care about keeping it in stock. Is this them starting to keep the packs in stock? I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Let's see here. Hello from Cambridge. Had my first 10th game yesterday, enjoyed the hell out of it, but the fixed squad size is totally stupid. We already house ruled that part. I mean, it's your game. You can totally do that, for sure. So after your video on the Combat Patrol boxes, I've bit the bullet and bought a box of Sisters of Battle. It's a kind of a cool box. Like there's a lot of stuff in there. If I was the one thing that's stopping me from painting or from going down that road is that I watched like a painting tutorial on the normal Sisters of Battle, and I was like, ooh, I feel like personally for myself, it would take me forever to paint them because there's so many tiny little details and they're such tiny little models that I'm like, yeah. I mean, I think the guard, I'm going to have to come up with a real simplified sort of system for my guard because there's going to be a lot of them. Just in the Combat Patrol alone, there's 20 shock troopers. And I'm going to expand, when I expand to 1,000 points, then I'll have a total of 30 shock troopers and also 10 Casterkins and 10 Krieg, and then vehicles and stuff like that. But still, that's a lot more models than I'm generally interested in going down that road. But I need to figure out a really kind of cohesive, especially since we're looking at 3 different types of troop, but a quick and cohesive, not painting every last little pouch and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I got to figure that out. Again, with military, generally everything's the same color anyway. So, you know, I get it. That's the one thing that'll help. Cutting up the model like that makes it harder to recast, I thought, maybe. Honestly, maybe, I don't know, but it seems like way too much work just for that, because no one's recasting guard. You know what I mean? Like a big, huge, like, you know, Titan or whatever, great. I could see people recasting that, or vehicles even, but no one's like, hey, let's recast all those little tiny guard guys. It's like, that's why they never have changed the $1 bill, because no one's counterfeiting those. You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't know. I think it's something to do with either it's cheaper to make molds that way. It's more time to make them old, but fewer, you know, busted little, you know, scratchy bits that go in there. Or it's so that they can get more sprues in per package, and so they're constantly trying to tighten the tolerances so that when you look at a sprue from the side, it's only like this high versus this high, you know? And when you have legs in there that are all one piece, you know, from the waist down, well, goodness, that's going to take too much space or something. I don't know. Was at GameCon in Calgary yesterday. Pretty good event. Both GW and local vendors had Leviathan in their booths. Nice. Yeah, I was originally scheduled to go to that convention as like a guest, but it didn't turn out. But I'm glad to hear it, because this is the first year, right? I believe this is the first year for that Calgary thing, and so I'm looking forward to. Hopefully, it'll be cool in the future, or I'll be able to go in the future, and hopefully it was cool. So it sounds cool. Leviathan is a Tyranid creature, not the Catalyst Games Labs Diesel Punk Airship. Oh, right. Yeah. No, Leviathan is the name of the new box, the new 10th edition Warhammer 40,000. Here is the new launch box or whatever, is Leviathan. And it comes with Tyranids and Space Marines. Leviathans is a game from Catalyst, the guys who make Battletech, and it is about floating battleships. Yes, I own an original copy of that, and they're redoing it again, I guess. So that's cool. I pre-ordered Leviathan from GW, and the order is still pending. I'm patient since it's a huge endeavor, but I've been seeing a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth online. You could cancel your order and go pick it up at your local store, if your local store has it. Check that first before you cancel, but that might be something to think about too, if you have a local store. If you're like, there's a local store that's 3 hours away from me and that's the closest, well, then that's probably not a great deal. But yeah, I like I said, I know a lot of local stores that are sitting on copies because they ordered a bunch and they didn't necessarily all sell out. I mean, it depends. My local store, like I said, got 9. Like they said, well, how about 9? Like the rep did, and he was like, yeah, that sounds good. But like then I said, also the other store across town, the rumor I heard was they got 201 copies, which is a lot. So I don't know. I think they do a little bit more online sales too, so maybe that's part of it. Might use less plastic in the molds if the torsos are hollow. Yeah, it could be too. Sure, I could see that. Pre-ordered Leviathan from GW. Oh, I read that one. People own iPads? I do. Yeah, I think iPads are awesome. Honestly, that's how I keep most of my rules. I keep most of my rules for games and things like that on iPads. I love, because then I can just go through and search. Like when I'm looking for a specific keyword, I can just do a quick search and look for that keyword and find it. I like it a lot. I'm usually about WYSIWYG, but I'm not changing the canon on my Wraithlord for Combat Patrol. We're pretending it's the right fictional space gun. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. Hi from rainy Blackpool in England. Already had half the stuff to make up the Chaos Space Marine Combat Patrol, so I picked up a Havoc Squad and a Hellbrute for cheap off eBay. Now I'm good to go. That's the other benefit. Excuse me. That's the other benefit as well to Combat Patrol, is that if you've already got some of that stuff, you either, or maybe all of that stuff, you could just start playing it. Like just download the stuff you need for free and go from there. I'll put money on the new molds theory. Machining huge slabs of metal is expensive. Sure, yeah, but they've been doing it that way for a long time. I mean, now, like I said, it could be a cost-cutting measure to make it so that the molding is cheaper that way because you're not going as deep. But I don't know enough, unfortunately, about it. Like rubber molds for metal models and for resin models are actually poured over a master. So you have this master sculpt thing and whatever, an armature that's holding onto it and all the little channels and all that kind of stuff. And then you pour this liquid rubber over it, let it set, pull it apart, all that jazz. That's how those kind of, but with plastic, most plastic other than Ceocast, the mold is metal, usually steel, but sometimes aluminum. And you don't just pour liquid steel over that's not how that works. You actually, it's ground out from the inside. So there's the two pieces of the mold generally. And so it used to be, and it's really interesting, actually. What you used to do is you used to sculpt something 3 times bigger than it needed to be. And then you had this stylus, and the technician would move the stylus over the surface of the 3-dimensional sculpt, which would then be like a linkage that would then go and grind. It'd be like a 3-to-1. So you had it 3 times bigger, and then you would slide it along the surface of stuff, and it would grind the inside over here on the mold. Not that far apart. It would be generally a little bit further apart, but whatever. But that's the old way they used to do it before computers and stuff, is you would sit there and build this thing 3 times bigger and then kind of slide this stylus, and then this other thing would be linked to it, and it would do the same thing over here and grind. Now you just, you know, you have a 3-dimensional shape in the computer and you tell the thing, okay, grind that out. And there's a robot arm that does it. But it is a lot of work. And again, every time that you get a really super pointy horn or thing like that on a GW model that pokes you as you're trying to hold the model together and wait for the glue to drive, to think about how the little stylus that went in there and ground that out into the steel had to be so incredibly tiny to make the tip of that horn so pointy, because you're doing it negative, right? So yeah, it's metal molds are really expensive, and I'm sure they're looking for ways to make them cheaper, but then it, I feel, makes the models a pain in the butt to build, and that makes me sad. So I don't know. That's maybe just a personal problem. My local store got the 201 copies. It must have been a special. Like you ordered 200, you didn't get a good price, but you that 201, then we give you a discount. It seems strange. Patiently waiting for my Wargames Atlantic Ura soldiers to build Majestic 13 teams. Nice. Those are great models. Great rules read so far, figuring a way to tie its narrative in with my Insurgent Earth storyline. Nice. Let's see. What chapter should I paint the new Space Marines? Whatever chapter you want, you know. Let's see here. I live in a smaller city, but the 2 game shops here had a bunch of Leviathan for our population size. We have 20 plus the pre-orders that they took, and the other one had 5 on the floor and more in back. Nice. When I go out and buy Leviathan, what should I do with the unopened Indominus set I have in my closet? I mean, you could... Do they take trade-ins? Non-hollowed volumes of plastic will deform when they cool. You can actually see it on some of the Skitari legs. Yeah, I suppose. I just know that it's... I'm not looking forward to staring down the barrel of building 30 of these Acadian shock troopers, because they're so... Especially because the legs don't snap together that well. Some of them, like, they're just like, yeah, you're just supposed to sort of line them up and then just hopefully, like, there's not like a post and a hole or anything like that. You're just like, kind of line it up and figure it out. I'm like, that's not awesome. Is the new box worth it if you don't play either of the factions? I made a whole video about that. Not this week, but last week. And the answer is no. You'd be amazed the amount of people in the comments who were like, well, this video is stupid. Obviously, you wouldn't buy the box if you don't want to play either of those factions. But there are a lot of people, like yourself, who have that question, which is why I made the video. I don't think your question is stupid at all. I think that your question is, to some degree, the result of the marketing being like, oh, you got to buy this Leviathan box. It's Leviathan Day. It's a big Leviathan thing. But honestly, if you don't want to play either of those armies, everything else you can download. I mean, there's a card deck if you want that card deck for for making missions where it's like, okay, deployment is like this, and then you shuffle through, and then this is the victory condition, and this is, you can do that, but you can buy that separately, I believe. I haven't seen it in my local shop, but then to be fair, I wasn't in there yesterday, so 2000 or 201 because they came in cases of 3. That sounds like math. I get you. Steel molds must be cut and machined to real technical skill, and molten styrene at high temperature and pressure is pumped into the mold from sprues. Yep. Majestic 13 is so dangerous for my painting schedule. Well, I can understand that. My wife ran out and bought 5 of the weirdest looking miniatures for aliens yesterday. That's the way. That's honestly the way. That is the way to do it. Is just buy weird looking models and then be like, boom, these are my alien creatures. It works out well. Good morning from Origins Game Fair in Columbus. How you doing there, Croesus? I want to go back to Origins one of these days. This year didn't work out, but one of these days. Let's see here. I'm looking forward to visiting North Bay Games and Hobbies when I'm up in North. Yep, gotcha. I bought Space Marine half for $130. No Tyranids for me. Makes sense. If you're not into Tyranids, then there you go. Card deck is on pre-order for next week now. Maybe that's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, that could be. Mission deck is the only thing you need to buy. And even then, do you need to buy? I mean, like, that's the thing. There are so many, like, you can go back through your old stuff, like, if you have any old stuff. If you're just starting out from brand, here's the way. If you've got a local game store, go into your local game store and go, what's a book that is technically, you can't, like, it's like 9th edition. It's not designed for 10th edition, but it has missions in it. And then your store owner will be like, this book, I don't know what to do with it now because it's technically 9th edition. Very probably you'll be able to use, or at least modify to some degree, those same missions and put them, to use in your games if you don't have the card deck. You don't need the card deck. It's not the end of the world. I will be very surprised if they make enough of the card decks. They probably won't, because that's kind of how they seem to roll sometimes. Well, and also the card decks are probably all coming from China. So they only have a finite number of those, and it's a whole thing. And I mean, there's a finite number of everything, but you see what I'm saying? If like Indominus is going to be around and you're going to see a ton of it, probably because a lot of people did order, a lot of stores bought a whole bunch of it, which is great. But I bet those card decks might be a little difficult, but missions are missions are missions. You can generally use, if you just have, modify things a little bit, you can very frequently use those types of missions for other stuff. But if you do buy the box, you have 2 combat patrols for those factions if you want to play them. Well, sure, yeah. If you want to play those factions, then it's a great box. Especially if you just want to do even the combat patrols, because you could, if you wanted to, probably sell. If you were like, I'm never going to do anything bigger than combat patrol, you have those 2 combat patrols. You could sell the rest of the models, throw them up on eBay. Even if you want the physical core book, that's pre-ordering soon. Yeah, there's going to be a different core book. It's just not going to say Leviathan on the front, but it's the same core book. But again, if you want the core rules, that's a free 60-page download. It's currently on the website. Suggested tactical soldiers models, STLs for Majestic 13. I would tell you to go to snarlingbadger.com, which is our website, and there's a section called News, which is kind of our blog, and there's an article in there about with a bunch of links to different places that we suggest for getting for models for the teams. There's also a post that's about the aliens. There are 2 separate posts. One's about building your teams, and one's about building your aliens. And so there's those. But yeah, there's awesome information in there. I don't have the link off the top of my head, but yeah, it's in the news section. How's the lore content in the Leviathan core book? Probably fine. I don't know. I'm not super into the lore. I've never really, like, I read, I like Eisenhorn, that series. I like Ravnor. Actually, yesterday I did start listening to the second in the Skitari series, just to have something on while I'm painting, or actually I was building, but yeah. It's okay, but I liked the first one, the first Skitari book, pretty well. It got better towards the end, but it started real dry. And this one is starting the same way, so we'll see how it goes. But for the most part, I'm not really into the lore. I want to usually make up my own lore in my head, and it's fine. So, but there's, I mean, in the new Leviathan book, the first 200 pages is just lore and hobby, not even hobby, just like pictures and art and stuff like that. Yeah. So there's a lot there. I'm custom sculpting an Inquisitor and Retinue, and the cloth is a pain to sculpt. Any green stuff sculpting tips? I've never been good at it. No, keep your tools wet is all I ever hear. I love Black Templar scheme, but I also have Sisters of Battle, and I think those schemes look too same. Well, Sisters of Battle, you don't have to paint them black. You could definitely do all kinds of colors. I think you can look online, you'll find tons of people. I mean, red could be kind of cool. You know what I mean? How different is 10th rules from 9th? It is, there are things that are simplified, which are real nice, which I prefer. They've cut back on the number of stratagems and tactics and all those, like, at any given time, you know, during a game at the end part of 9th, you'd be like, well, I have 48 different stratagems I could choose from right now. They're generally giving you fewer than that, like 6 generally, I think, per army. Not including the standard ones like the reroll and stuff like that. So there's like some general ones that everyone gets access to, but then each army has far fewer than they used to because it was just way too many. There was no need for it, my opinion. But yeah, so that's a big thing. They got rid of the psychic phase, so thank God. There's still psychic stuff that can happen, but now it's either just a built-in ability of some flavor, or it's basically like the shooting phase. Like you have this, smite. It's like a gun, basically. It's mind bullets. You know what I mean? Telekinesis, Kyle. So yeah, that kind of stuff is kind of, you know, and there's a bunch of different things, but I don't know that I could necessarily clear. Part of the issue, I didn't really play 9th. I was big in 5th and 6th. 7th, I kind of started to crap out. 8th, I played a bunch of. And then when 9th came out, I read the rules and I was like, I don't know. And then I just never played anything in 9th. And so I'm not a great expert to compare the last two that well. But yeah. Off to buy some wood, building a new bench to build and paint on. Nice. Cults 3D is my STL go-to. They've got really good, cool stuff. It isn't just minis, though. That be prepared to search for exactly what you want. Sure. I mean, that's the case with a lot of those things. But my mini factory is really nice just because it's so many minis, and there's lots of things you can search for. Are 40K campaign books usable for something like one-page rules? I'm looking at Book of Rust. They could be. I mean, it's going to take a little bit of maybe conversion, house ruling a little bit amongst you and your people who you're playing with. But yeah, I mean, a lot of those types of books, there are companies out there that make like books for games that, like, they don't make them for specific games. They put out a book and it's for gaming, but they're like giving you ideas and concepts and some lore and things like that. And then you could use it for this role-playing game or that role-playing game, or maybe for this campaign for your, miniature game, or for that one or whatever. There's a lot of different options there. Hello from a smoky and muggy Ontario. Yeah, finally today, my phone is not telling me. It's actually telling me the temperature instead of telling me that there is a air quality warning. Like, that's what it generally tells me on the top up there. And it's been doing that for quite some time. And it's because of the smoke coming down from Canada. So I hope that's starting to finally calm down a little bit. Let's see here. Dawn of War Sisters of Battle had a cool white and gold scheme. Nice. My sisters are white armor and bright blue cloth. That sounds kind of cool. I'm in dire need of a comfortable ergonomic chair that fits my space. Yeah, me too. To get a Game Workshop discount, you need to have bought at least 1,000 pounds of Games Workshop stock, either the complete paint range or the selected box sets, mostly Space Marines, in order to get a discount. Oh, I see what you're saying. I thought you meant as a person, but you're meaning as a store. I get you. Come for the painting tips, stay for the Tenacious D references. I mean, yeah. Snarling fill in the blank, didn't catch the full name. Oh, yeah, Snarling Badger. So it's, snarlingbadger.com. That's the website. That's where you can get Majestic 13, Space Station 0, Rain in Hell. But if you go to snarlingbadger.com, Badger like like badger. I don't know. Anyway, you can go there is in the news section. That's where our blog stuff is, so you can check there for sure. On top of all that, you need an annual Games Workshop turnover of about £5,000 to get the 30% discount. Yeah. Did my sisters in copper armor with white cloth. You know, I have never found a copper paint that wasn't thick and kind of gummy. So if you found a good one, let me know, because I've never found a good copper paint. I've even used copper airbrush paint before from like Vallejo and stuff like that, and it's better, but still kind of a little gummy. I don't know what it is about. Maybe it's something to do with the way copper mica has to be a bigger size to make the color right, or I don't know. It's weird. Very weird. I wish GW would do a build your own combat patrol or offer some alternatives. I mean, technically, if you decide you want to play either Grey Knights or Custodes, well, then you do have alternatives, because if you want to play Grey Knights or Custodes, the combat patrol is like these 2 or 3 units, and then either this unit or this unit, but you can't take them both because they would be way too powerful. So you do get the alternatives, but just in those 2 armies, Grey Knights and Custodes, which is initially my thought was, I think they're going to tell you you can't use this one thing in Custodes. And then later on, I'm like, that would be dumb, because then people would be like, then why did I buy this box if I have a thing in there I can't use? And then I was like, maybe it'd be smarter if they gave you the choice to use this or that, which is what they did. So I appreciate that. But in general, I think that if they gave you more choices, I think if you want choice, they want you to play 1,000 points. That's just straight up the way it goes. If you're going to play a 500 point roughly game, then they're aiming towards newer players and beginners, and those people can get analysis paralysis. So the idea is like, look, do it this way. Here you go. I mean, honestly, if you want to build your own combat patrol, just play 500 points. From what I understand, the game is a little sketchy at 500 points, and it's better at 1,000. So that's why I'm looking at making combat patrols, the way that they tell you to, and then taking a couple of those and turning them into 1,000-point armies eventually. But that's as far as I want to go. I don't ever want to run 2,000-point army. That's too big of a game. I don't want to run that. It takes too long. Like, they're like, oh yeah, 2,000-point game takes 3 hours. I'm like, my rear end, it does. It takes a lot longer than that generally these days. Especially if you haven't been doing it all the time. If you're like in a tournament situation where you're just firing on all cylinders and both know exactly what you're supposed to be doing and you're going against the clock and you're not. But if you're trying to play the game and try to figure things out and have a good time, a 2,000-point game will take 4 hours easy. So, yeah. If you'd make yourself a 40k character, what stats would you have? Probably not great ones. Probably not great ones. We have a week of rain coming to Ontario. Hopefully it'll help with the fires. That does sound good, yeah. Got my Leviathan box, but then my models for Majestic 13 showed up, so I'm focusing on Majestic 13 right now. I mean, I think that's probably the smart move. Sure, I can understand that. Snarling mushroom. I mean, we haven't gone down that road yet, but we could. Found a Mothman STL on Cults for Majestic 13. I'm stoked to get started playing. Nice. I think Mothman, that'd be kind of fun, sure. Who is into who is into tabletop gaming because of Uncle Adam's videos? Me. Well, that's very nice of you to say, Ziv. For copper, I like the Pro Acryl one pretty well. Do I have that? Geez, I should. Is it copper or bronze? I use the bronze and the light bronze all the time, but I don't remember if I've used the copper. I should take a look. I thinned my copper with gold ink. I didn't even know they made gold ink. Interesting. Recently found a good deal on Mantic's Mars Attacks core box. That's pretty cool. That's kind of an older game, sure. Been collecting the rest of the models and got a piece of scenery crash saucer that I thought that might work for Majestic 13. I have seen several people talk about the Mantic Mars Attacks models and using them for Majestic 13. I've seen people talking about that, yeah. Real hot take here, I know. Grey Knights need new sculpts badly. Refresh the whole range. Yeah, you're not wrong. So do, frankly, I think Blood Angels do too. As a person who's getting into Blood Angels to some degree, like, you got, what's his name there? Jumpy McGee in the gold armor. I can't think of his name ever. Commander Dante. I know that's a new model, and he's in Primaris armor finally now. I hate that model. I don't know what it is. Just the way he's posed and sort of like he's got one little foot on the tip of the rock and all that kind of stuff. And I just like every time I see that model, I just think in my head that he is saying tee-hee, tee-hee, because he's just hopping from rock to rock, and it's just I don't know what it is about it, but it doesn't do it for me. The other new model that they have, or newish model at least, is Mephiston. That guy's kind of cool, except he's got two poses. He's got one where he's doing this, like he's trying to stop a sneeze. Evidently, it's based off of a piece of artwork, and he's wiping blood off of his mouth because he's a space vampire. But the model in the picture looks like he's trying to not sneeze. He's like, but it's, yeah. He also can take a plasma pistol. I'm going to give him a plasma pistol. I mean, like when you get the chance to give somebody a plasma pistol, you give him a plasma pistol. So I don't have to worry about that. So I have that model, and I will do something with him at some point in my 1,000-point army. That might be kind of fun. But like Sanguinary Priest, Sanguinary Guard, like all those models are old. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of wish that there was some sort of jump troop for Primaris. I don't know. I know there's like those suppressor guys, but I don't know. Like a jump assault troop. That's what I would like to see. And I think that they could put him into Blood Angels first. Totally. Pro-Acryl Metallic set does have a basic copper. I find Pro-Acryl to be thinner than other ranges. Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's a nice, it's like it's got good density to it, but it's a maybe not thinner, but more fluid for sure. Definitely a more fluid paint. Just going to call him Jumpy McGee from now on. Sure, there you go. Gorgrunt, a contrast paint over silver makes an excellent copper. Ooh, yeah, I like doing stuff like that too. Like a nice soft brass is just basically, I like to use a nice silver like the Vallejo model metallic air silver, and then throw Seraphim Sepia over it, the old stuff, and it makes a great soft brass. It's really nice. Struggle of Firstborn versus Primaris. The Grey Hunter Blood Cost set is not very flexible. Sure. I feel like they're trying to take some flexibility out because of reasons. Probably economic reasons. Also, potentially when you're like, especially if you're a newer person and you're like, hey, here's this army that has like so many options, and you're like, I don't even know what to do with them. That can be, again, an analysis paralysis thing. Like, there's still decent options on normal troops. You still get, you know, oh, do you want to go Melted? Do you want to go Flamer? Do you want to go this? Do you want to go that? You know, and of course with the Xenos, they have their own kind of things that I can't keep track of. You want to go with the bubble gun or the gun that shoots bees, or I don't know what there's a lot of different things going on over there and there. Adam needs a plasma pistol prop. Yeah, I kind of do want one a little bit. I should probably look into that. I just prefer my old Marines these days. So much easier to kit bash and convert. I think that sometimes the difficulty for kit bashing in Primaris is if it's more push fit. Like it's harder to it is harder to kit bash the Primaris and which are the Infernus guys, and the Terminators that come in Leviathan because they're push fit. Like, if you wanted to be like, oh, I'm just going to swap out shoulder pads, it's a little bit harder on those guys. You have to get in there and start doing a lot of clipping to get the shoulder pad off, and then some green stuff to get a new shoulder pad in there. It's not just as easy as putting a different shoulder pad on. Now, when the Infernus models, if they come out as a single kit, they will not be push fit, I assume, and then those guys will have normal shoulder pads, so you'll be able to swap things and swap heads. Swapping heads, even on push fit models, is not nearly as hard as swapping shoulder pads, just because, yeah, it's just easier. But shoulder pads are still pretty hard to do that way. Commander Dante is a nice looking model, but I don't like his new head. How did they get his old mask onto the new Primaris helmet? It just you know how like when you put like a shirt in the dryer and then it gets shrunk and smaller? They did like the opposite of that in space. I don't exactly know. That's a good question. Make a little stogie and stick it under that blood wiping finger. Dutch from Predator style. Yeah, there you go. I could do that. Like I said though, I want the plasma pistol. I agree with the Blood Angels too. Dante has a real Clooney Batman vibe now. Yeah, no, you're right. There you go. Yeah. Can't take the model seriously. Yep. No, I get that. Totally. Aren't the Dark Angels Inceptors Primaris jump models? I don't even know. They've got so many crazy names that I can't tell what the heck. Like the Inceptors, the Intercessors. Yeah, I don't know. I can't think. Are the Inceptors? I'll have to go look. I don't know. That's a good question. Perhaps Mephiston has COVID and doesn't want to spread it around. Space COVID. Could be. Reason I was asking is I might ask my nephew to print a couple of STLs for me. Gotcha. Going to be at the FLGS all day, and my Father's Day gift card may become a combat patrol if I'm not careful. That'll happen. That will happen. Primaris jump packs are supposed to be coming later this year. Ooh. Because then I would definitely be more interested in Primaris Death Guard. No. Death Company. The Death Company. Death Guard and Death Company are two totally different things. Yeah. Because there are stats for Primaris Death Company right now, but they're just basically regular Primaris or Assault Primaris, but not Jumpy Assault Primaris. And I think Jumpy Assault might be kind of cool. Plasma B Bolt Gun, a new top tier weapon from the Imperium. I mean, maybe, yeah. Silver undercoat, Indian orange, yellow transparent ink. A gun that shoots bees? That's Bush League. Need a launcher that hurls robot squirrels. Ooh, there you go. Super Conflicted as a Space Wolves Blood Angels player. Simplifying all the hundreds of units for Space Marines is necessary, but it often costs flavor and uniqueness than non-codex compliance. I feel like sometimes that there's already too much. And I know that makes me probably a bad person. It got so sunny out all of a sudden. But you know what I mean? Like, they've been doing... I'm sure it also helps them to simplify the gameplay a little bit. And when I say simplify, I don't even mean making the game simpler. It's just simplifying the balance, I guess is the term, or making the balance more balanced. You know what I mean? Like when you have, like, well, there's the potential for, you know, when we have this many models in this particular range for this thing, there are, you know, we start getting into 10 to the 21st power different possibilities of army building and stuff like that. There's no way to obviously like figure out how to, you know, balance all that stuff. And that's what we see. So limiting those things a little bit, you know, now the lore folks are going to be unhappy because they're like, yeah, but what about my weird, like one-off only for this particular, you know, chapter specific models that are made in fine cast and you guys aren't going to make that in plastic? And they're like, no, we're not, because we don't, you and 6 other people will buy them. And that is not, we're not going to get the cost back on the, you know, the molds. This is at that point becomes an argument for 3D printing, honestly. Like if GW was ever going to get into 3D printing, it would be, in my opinion, because they would have like weird, like bits or weird stuff that they're like, we don't want to manufacture this stuff, but we kind of already have a 3D sculpt of it, or it's very easy for us to finish up the 3D sculpt. So print it and do what you want with it. Here's a data sheet for it. We're never going to print that. It's just a download. Knock yourself out. Like, I would like to see more stuff like that if they want to add flavor back into the game, but maybe also make it so that stuff only works in narrative play. Because when you could decide, well, we want a very flavorful list, but you also want to be something that's very tournament competitive, those two things shouldn't generally work together. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, would it be great? I guess maybe, but it seems unlikely. What I'm waiting for is for them, now that the Leviathan is out, I'm waiting for them to come out with this new Sanguinor model and a new Astorath sculpt. Yeah, Astorath, a bunch of those blood angels could use new ones. Yeah. Captain Tycho looks rough. Yeah. I mean, honestly, you could just you could kit bash your own Captain Tycho. You just take a Primaris Captain model. Well, because that's the thing. Like, I mean, he is still technically firstborn, so I don't think he has, I have to check and see. Maybe he's got more wounds than I thought. So that is maybe something that you could do and just decide, I'm going to make him Primaris sized and then give him a Primaris base body and then be like, that's Captain Tycho. And then, you know, but I'm not sure. Hello, greetings from Belgium. I hope you're doing well, Uncle. I wish you a fantastic day. Well, thank you, Miguel. I appreciate that. First time I've gotten to catch your live stream. Seriously, love your channel. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that as well. So glad I was able to get 2 packs of Uncle Adam's favorite brushes from the Monument Store Hobbies restock. Yeah, no, it was a long time coming, so I'm glad. Do you play Magic the Gathering like Ninjon and Vince? No, I don't. I have, like, back in the day, I played Magic for a while in the 90s. Like, when it went from beta to unlimited is when I started. And then there was, like, Ice Age and Antiquities and was it Legends? I don't know. Like, all those first couple of sets and stuff like that I played for a while at that time. This is back before you sleeved your cards. That's literally how old that long ago that was. And so I played back then a little bit, and then I tried to get into Commander maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and it didn't really take. So there's plenty of people around here who play, but the problem is that most of the people around here who play have been playing for 20, 25 years or whatever. And so sitting down to play with them doesn't work for me, because I'm just trying to get a creature out onto my little cool neoprene mat here. And they're like, I am trying to destroy the world with this, combination of cards. This card is 20 years old and I've been holding on to it for this entire time. And now I've made this combo. And I'm like, no, thanks. So yeah, it's not really a game for me anyway, because there's no miniatures in it. So there's that. But Vince and John are having a good time with it for sure. Intercessors, incursors, interceptors, inceptors, infiltrators. What's hard to remember? See, that's a good question. They got a jump pack on Titus for the trailer of Space Marine 2, and it looks kind of bland. I don't know. I mean, if it's based off the Primaris ones, we're going to get them. I'm going to miss the old ones. I love the Prims. I like jump packs. I think they're cool. I just want some on regular Primaris guys. Is there anyone here who paints in natural sunlight outdoors? Gosh, that's where there's bears outside. I don't try to go out there too much if I can help it. Let's see here. Thanks for describing why I ditched BattleTech or 40K for BattleTech. Sure. Sounds like Uncle is describing something like D&D's community library thing, but he's probably imagining one that isn't bad. Maybe. Tycho went to the Death Company. Maybe the thirst made him bigger. I mean, sometimes if you eat a lot of stuff or drink a lot of stuff, you can get bigger. Some people will call it fatter, I suppose, whatever. But isn't Tycho one of the very few Space Marine named characters that full on died? I don't know. He's in the Blood Angels index. There's 2 versions, actually. There's Captain Tycho and Tycho the Lost. And I don't know the lore behind it, but I just looked at them and I'm like, man, they've got like photographs of like studio painted of both of those models and they look real old. I was like, huh, okay, cool. So I don't really know a ton about him, but evidently he got better. I don't know. We rubbed some dirt on it. Chapter shoulder pads and other flavor pieces as STLs would make a lot of sense. You'd still have to buy the models, but those extra coming out 6 months later, the Forge World just seems annoying. Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, I don't think that Games Workshop's ever going to get into 3D printing. Like, they're not ever going to sell STLs. They're just, as a company, completely against the concept. Whatever. Like, even for terrain or something, like they could, like, Modifius is selling tons of STLs for terrain for like the Fallout game and stuff like that. Cool. Gas stations and the cars and all the stuff that it's not a big stretch for them to talk to Bethesda, I'm assuming, and get like the base STLs and then work them down, not STLs, whatever system, the base 3D model that they get from, let's say, the actual video game company, and then figure out a way to convert that to STL, get rid of a bit of the detail or maybe add more. I mean, it depends. And then tweak all that stuff, make it printable. But there was a guy from the Battle Badgers gaming club that was at, they brought a bunch of stuff at TMX and they were running the Fallout Wasteland Warfare game. I can't remember the full name of it, but the Fallout miniatures game. And the table looked amazing because it was all 3D printed STL stuff directly from Modifius. So I don't know. I don't know why they don't do some of that, but they just don't seem like they're interested. Good old Ice Age brings back memories. Oh, yeah. Let's see here. I want a year of refreshes while they hammer out the rules, but I know they won't. Well, that would be nice, yeah. They could definitely use some refreshing, that's for sure. A lot of lines could use refreshing, but we will see. I still think GW is missing out by not selling STLs. they would make a killing even if they sold them for the price of a normal pack. I think the issue is that they know as soon as they sell it, then someone's just going to put it up on wherever pirate stuff goes these days. I don't know. And they can't control that. Like other STL sellers are like, okay, because there are a lot of people out there who want to support the STL seller. And there's a lot of people out there who are like, I'll do the Patreon or whatever. People won't want to support GW. They'll just be like, I just want the STLs for free. They're a big enough company. They owe me. Now, here's the deal. I don't completely disagree. Now, I'm not saying that they should be putting out all their stuff as STLs for free, but I'm thinking that they could put out some. Like, and again, I would go for terrain, specific terrain, weird stuff that like most people might not want to buy, but is very flavorful and looks really cool on the table. That's the kind of stuff that they should be putting out to test the waters of STL. Put it out for free. Then you don't have to worry about people stealing it. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be that hard. But I don't think they will. I think all of us Firstborn fans have pin our hopes on Horus Heresy. Yeah, I could see that for sure. If they put jump packs on Primaris, I would consider upgrading my Raven Guard army. Sure, I could see that too. I mean, that's the thing. I think that you would see people being like, okay, I've been holding out because of jump packs, but now, you know. Morning, Uncle Adam. Do you know any skirmish games that would let me play as my monster minis? Play as monsters. Not, you could, I mean, our most, well, yes, actually Reign in Hell. That would not be a bad, that's a game that Vince and I wrote, Reign in Hell. It's about demons fighting demons in post-apocalyptic hell, but monsters can be demons. Demons can be monsters, whatever. Anything can be a demon if you believe in yourself. So yeah, that wouldn't be a bad place to start. Potentially take a look at that. Good old Reign in Hell. Is there DRM built into the STL standard? Maybe the fear of piracy? Yeah, no, there's not that I know of. And that's the problem too, is that I don't know that it's a great idea. Like, again, people have talked about it in the past jokingly, and I don't think it's necessarily as big of a joke as people think. I could see GW getting into 3D printing as long as you had to buy the 3D printer from them, you had to buy the material from them, and you had to buy the STLs from them, and they were not compatible with anything else. Then they'd be like, yeah, cool, let's do that. But otherwise, no. Talking about getting models from games, Bob from I Like to Make Stuff. Oh, yeah, I think I've seen some of his stuff, yeah. He's got that cat. It's not really a cat. But anyway, worked with the Hogwarts game. Apparently, the actual models in game are very low poly. Most of the size comes from the texture. Yeah, that is kind of the thing about STLs versus video games, 3D shapes, is that video games trick you a lot by adding in three-dimensional bump mapping and stuff like that into the textures, but the actual models themselves are not particularly high poly. I mean, they're getting better and better and better every year. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on in the Unreal Engine that is designed to take it. It's crazy what this Unreal Engine 5 stuff is able to do. But in the grand scheme of things, you're not talking about an incredibly high. We may get to that point soon where the Unreal Engine will be able to take an incredibly high detail model and then back it off and lower the polys depending on how far away it is to make the machine run better and jazz like that and blah, blah, blah. But for right now, video game assets only really work as like a jumping off point for STLs for 3D printing. But yeah, you still at least get like the proportions and the sizes and all that kind of stuff and everything. At least something, you know. I've been enjoying Mantix STLs. Nice. Combat Patrol pulled me back into 40k. Nice. It's doing the same for me. Of course, two patrols I want are out, Steel Hands and Necrons. I don't think I'm familiar with Steel Hands. Necrons should be at least soon, though. I mean, honestly, if you have the Indominus box, then all you need is a Doomstalker, and then you've got the Combat Patrol, because all the rest of the stuff that's in the Necron Combat Patrol comes from the Indominus box. So if you had the Indominus box or any of those other, like, 9th edition kind of like Command box, Elite box, Recruit box, stuff like that, all you need is that, again, and I can't think of his name, but he's an Overlord that has that tachyon arrow, like single shot thing. And then you need 3 Scorpec destroyers. You need 10 warriors, although 5 of them have one weapon and 5 of them have the other weapon. And then you need the Doomstalker. I think that's all. That's the entirety of the thing. Do a reverse Majestic 13 from the aliens' point of view and fight the different factions on Earth. I mean, you could. I think Magic the Gathering was fun in high school about 20 years ago, but nowadays there are so many sets and new ones that are coming rapidly all the time. Oh, and they're getting faster. Yeah, no, for sure. That's Bill. Right. Not Bob. Bill. Right. Yep. From Make Stuff. Yep. At the very least, GW should shift Forge World over to high-resolution resin printers since their resin models are so poorly done. On certain things, yes. I think on the big things they couldn't, like, you know, the big, huge Warlord Titans and stuff like that. I don't think they could then. Yeah, probably not. But for the like smaller things like conversion bits and things like that, yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I mean, they can code to have individual copies of books and games to keep people from sharing and copying, maybe something like that for GWSTLs. It would depend then upon, like, because, okay, so from what I understand, the way it works is that you get an STL, and then you have to put it into a piece of software called a slicer, that then converts it and gets it ready to be put into your printer, whether it's an FDM printer with the big spool of plastic, whether it's a liquid resin printer, whether it's that kind of powdery laser printer, which most people don't have, but like, you know, not Squarespace, Shapeways has. But to make it so that an STL, you'd have to like literally make your own slicer so that like these would not be regular STLs. They would be some other type of STL, some sort of DRM baked in STL that if you put it into a regular slicer, it'd be like, yeah, I don't know what to do with this. And you would then have to use a specific, you know, slicing program that would say, okay, yes, you are registered as the owner of this particular STL, so therefore you get to use it and blah, blah, blah. And now we can make the G code, which will then go into your printer or whatever. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's not as easy, unfortunately, as we'd hope. Iron Hands, still my first count. Gotcha, okay. Iron, steel, it's basically the same stuff. As someone with the 9th starter, I was hoping 10th Combat Patrol would be something worth buying. Again, it is if you want those armies. I think they're great models, but if you don't, then just download the stuff and, you know, go from there. Maybe buy a pack of cards if you're into that kind of thing, or don't, you know, for sure. STL is an ancient file format without any kind of definitions for changes. If you add the new stuff, you break compatibility. Yeah. That's the thing. And that's one of the reasons why it's so compatible and why I think it's in so wide use, is because it is available and is old and it is very open concept and stuff like that. If they were like, hey, let's make it so that these STLs only work with this one piece of software, they would have to make something completely different on it. It sounds like Gesundheit. I could see GW hiring somebody to code an app and a slicer to control the downloads of their STL files. I think going down that road is, again, like I said, it feels like to me, and somebody let me know here in the chat, you 3D printing experts, it feels to me like if they did that, they would almost have to partner with a specific printer, because the thing that the slicer does is that it knows, like, you have to put in basically either like, oh, I have this printer and it already has all the stats that it needs for that, or else if you have a real weird printer that Lychee or the other slicer, I can't think of the name of, anyway, if they've never heard of that printer, then you have to go through and figure out online somewhere, like, well, what should be all the stats that I put in here to make it so that this slicer knows how to make stuff for this printer. So, and that gets huge. It's almost like data files for like Battlescribe, right? Like it becomes a huge deal and people have to come up with it and all that kind of stuff, especially for like, if you made your own printer, people do that sometimes. I knew a guy back in the day who built a 3D printer and then used it to print parts to make a bigger 3D printer, which seems like Inception a little bit, but Yeah, that's the issue, though, is the slicing thing and all that kind of stuff. They would almost need to partner with a specific company to make a specific printer. So you would have to buy a Games Workshop printer and then download the games, or it would hopefully come with the Games Workshop slicer so that you could open up Games Workshop non-STL files, some sort of DRM locked 3D files, and it's a whole thing. Well, your cat sneezes like a human. No, that was my wife. That was my wife that sneezed. The cats sometimes sound like humans, but they usually sneeze quicker. Margot is kind of a very fast staccato sneezer, and she'll go 10 times and then stop. Well, I don't know that we've been counting, but she'll go like what seems like 10 times. Is the Necron Doom Scythe better for Combat Patrol in 10th? I have the Combat Patrol that it came with. No. So that box, they didn't make stats for that box, unfortunately. So the 3 different sets that were technically available in stores that they have basically not made Combat Patrol stats for, the Tyranids, because they've replaced the Tyranids with the Tyranids from the Leviathan box, and I'm assuming at some point they'll release a new Tyranids Combat Patrol box, which will just be those models that make up the Combat Patrol from the Leviathan box. Not all of the Tyranids from the Leviathan box, but just the ones that make up the Combat Patrol. So there's the Tyranids, there's the Space Marines. So the Space Marines Combat Patrol box had the floating El Camino in it, and it had, like, I don't know, some intercessors and some other jazz. That's no longer technically a Combat Patrol box that has rules for it, which I think was, again, kind of a misstep on their part. Instead, it is 12 of the models from the Space Marine side of the Leviathan box. You've got the Terminator Captain, the Terminator Librarian, 5 Terminators, and 5 of the Primaris Infernus guys, which are basically the Primaris guys walking around with the big flamethrowers, which are pretty awesome, as it turns out. I have cooked a good amount of bugs already so far, playing against Sam in Combat Patrol. Usually on Overwatch, strangely enough. So anyway, yeah, and then the other box was the Necron box. So there's a new Necron box that I'm assuming will be coming, and it is mostly a bunch of models from Indominus, plus the Doom Stalker, which is the big kind of War of the Worlds sort of 4-legged guy with a big giant gun on his head. Yeah, that's unfortunately what's in there. They can have printers at the Warhammer stores, and they print them there only. I've been hearing that for a while, and there are some game stores out there that have 3D printers for printing stuff just like that. Not the GW stuff, but you come in with something you got off of My Mini Factory, you give them a thumb drive, and then they're like, okay, cool, we'll have it done in 3 days or whatever, and you come back and pick it up. It's a lot of work to have a store that does that, because you have to have somebody who's like dedicated to that, and so many independent game stores are very frequently one person, maybe 2. You know, maybe you've got, you know, very frequently you'll have a store and they actually have an employee or 2, but that's pretty rare. So many stores, the person who cleans the bathroom is also the person who makes the orders, is also the person who rings up the sales, and is also the person who owns the store. So, yeah. And GW has got one person. The GW stores here in the States, at least, I don't know about overseas, but here in the States, I'm pretty sure most of them, and by most of them, I mean 99% of them, have one person working, not at a time, but in general. Like, if this person is like, I have to go to the dentist today, then the store's not open. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have a second employee and there's no schedule. It's just, if the store's open, this person is there. So yeah, that I don't see them doing that either. Cheetu box, that's the other one. Machines making other machines. This is how we get a robot revolution. It's true. I mean, the 3D printer couldn't make the parts by itself. Like, the guy had to put them in there and all that kind of stuff, and then take them out and put the whole thing, like, it. Yeah, but it was, he used the 3D printer to make bigger parts, and then had to put that together and stuff like that. So he was helping the robot revolution, but, you know, he didn't just like go to bed one night and wake up and it was like, hey, there's 3 more 3D printers in here and they're all looking at me. That'd be weird. Are the old Firstborn Marines still viable as a force in 10th edition? I have 15,000 points in 7th edition of Blood Angels. I mean, they all still have stuff. They still have stats and all that kind of stuff, so you can still run them. I'm not the guy to ask whether they're viable, like, strategically, because I don't have any strategery in me. But yeah. I think the Tyranid and Space Marine combat patrols will be in the new Command Edition or whatever they call it. Yeah, that's a possibility as well. Like in the past, like 9th edition, so they had the Indomitus box that came out, which was a big honking box full of stuff. Then they had, I think, a box called, there was Recruit, Elite, and Command, or Commander. I think it was Command. And they were basically kind of like Indominus, but like one of them was like a $60 box. So it was just a little bit of this and a little bit of the Necrons, and there you go. And then the next box had a little bit more stuff, plus a little bit of terrain. And then the Command box had like more stuff. Not everything that was in Indominus, but a good amount of stuff, plus also some like those pipes and some other, stuff. And they'll probably do that type of thing again with 10th edition. So yeah, we will see. Have you chilled on Warcry or Combat Patrol at the moment? Plus, have you seen Peachy's love letter video to Warcry? I have not seen Peachy's love letter video to Warcry. I haven't played Warcry in a little bit, but mainly it's because I've been like the only playing I've been doing lately, and it's not been a ton, unfortunately, but the only playing I've been doing lately, like I said, has been Combat Patrol recently. So, yeah, I don't know about Warcry. There'll be a new version coming this upcoming summer, next year, 2024. I would be surprised if there wasn't, but there will be. I'm 90% sure. Is that right? Because yeah. No, I'm kidding. No. There's not a new version coming out. There just was a new version. New version of Kill Team coming out next summer. Never mind. Not Warcry. Next summer is going to be the summer of Age of Sigmar, which is like Warcry, which is where I was getting the problem. It's going to be Age of Sigmar and Kill Team probably next summer. And then the summer after that will probably be a new Warcry. So, yeah. Yeah, the one guy at the Warhammer store was having a hard time yesterday with a line around the corner. Sure, yeah, I can see that. I have enough models for Necrons and Death Guard for Combat Patrol, looking for Leviathan for Tyranids and Space Marines. I'll have 4 patrols. That'd be pretty cool. And have 1 group for everyone in my gaming group. Nice. If 3D printers ever become sentient, we are in big trouble. Yeah, that's true. When I got into the hobby, the local GW store had 3 employees and opened 9 to 9 every day. Now it's open from 11 to 6 with 1 employee and closes for an hour for lunch. Whenever I go in there, it's just me in there. Yeah, I am glad that, we do have, I finally, like for the longest time, there were just no Warhammer stores anywhere near me. There was like 1 in Milwaukee and 1 in Madison, and I think 1 in Kenosha, which is right on the border with Illinois. Well, now there's 1 in West Bend, and there's 1 in De Pere, which is up near Green Bay. The 1 in De Pere, I think, is the closest to me. It's about a 45 to 50 minute drive away. But there's no actual GW Warhammer stores closer than that. But there's plenty of stores that sell their stuff and have tables to play and have more stuff than that and have other brands of paint and have all kinds of stuff like that all around me. So there's 2 independent stores here in town. Next town over, there's at least 3 that I can think of off the top of my head. So yeah, I don't miss not having a GW store nearby because I've got plenty of stores that carry tons of their stuff and also lots of other fun stuff too. So that's pretty cool. Sometimes I'm surprised that they keep the stores open. I really am. I'm a little surprised they haven't just decided to go just straight on web, but they're maybe heading in that direction. The fact that they have like 1 employee at every store and they're barely ever open because I remember the first time that I was going to go to the Madison store, I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm in Madison and I got time. I'm going to go to the game store, and it was closed. It was like a Tuesday. And I'm like, oh, they're not open on Mondays and Tuesdays. Neat. Okay. Very helpful. So yeah. Let's see. Been having a Warcry funk. Need to build a new board, and that can definitely help for sure. New edition of Sigmar is next year, right? Yeah, it looks like 2024 because it'll be 3 years since 2021. So yeah, and at least with their big 4 games in this situation being 40K, Age of Sigmar, Kill Team and Warcry. They seem to be on a 3-year schedule. Necromunda and Blood Bowl and Titanicus and Fly Aroundicus and all that kind of stuff. Not so much, but at least those big 4. Oh, and also Horus Heresy. I don't know what kind of schedule they're on with Horus Heresy. Is the new main rulebook the only place to get Combat Patrol missions? Currently, yes. And I'm hoping that changes. I kind of expected by yesterday that they would have put out a PDF of the 6 missions that are in the Leviathan book, but they hadn't yet. Now, there's still a chance they still will. There's a possibility they might this coming week or next week. I don't know. The only reason I could see why they might do that and wait until after is honestly just to get people to be like, well, the Combat Patrol missions are not available anywhere but the Leviathan box. So I'll just buy that entire Leviathan box so I need that one book. That would be dumb. Don't do that. If you don't, unless you want the other models and all the stuff and you want the box, great. But don't just buy the box, $250 American, so that you can get the Combat Patrol stuff that's in there. That seems like a bad use case. Unless you're going to sell all the stuff that's not that book in there. But again, probably they'll come out with a PDF of it. I hope they do. They better. Look at you, Mr. I have stores all around me. Well, it's the Midwest. Back when we were doing Game 4, in the early days, just before we launched it, I basically went around and did a bunch of research through, Google Maps and all kinds of places like that, and tried to come up with a very, very comprehensive list of all of the tabletop gaming stores within 100 miles of where I am right now, and there were 50. So yeah, Midwest has got a lot of gaming stores because winter sucks. And you can't go outside too much. So. Does GW own the stores, or is that a franchise thing? I think they own the stores. I don't think it's a franchise thing at all. I visited an official GW store last weekend. I was surprised to find that they actually had less variety than the FLGS I've been buying plastic from. Yeah, that can happen too. You can go into, like, some of these stores are tiny, like really tiny. Like they'll have a table, and yeah, no, you're right. There's times you go to a GW store and you're like, there's more stuff at my local than what you guys have here. Yeah. Let's see here. Only one GW here. Indie stores have really picked up post-COVID. Yep. What do you think the reason is that unlike D&D, 40K players don't really go back to play older editions? I mean, some do. I think partially, okay, so when you play Dungeons and Dragons or any role-playing game, it is usually, I'm going to sit down and play with my group. So it's the 4 of us, and then this guy's the new guy, and by the new guy, I mean he's been playing with us for only the last decade, but the rest of us have been playing since high school or whatever, that kind of thing. And so you have your group, and you could play whatever you want. You can swap around between things. You'd be like, well, we've been playing 2nd edition since 2nd edition came out, and we don't see the reason to change, so we don't want to, so we don't. And there's no reason to, because the books are still books, and there's not new stuff coming out and all that kind of stuff. I think the reason that people don't do it as much with miniature games, specifically 40K as an example, is because the people who play old versions of 40K are people who only play with a specific group of people, kind of like the RPG folks do. The people who are playing, going to the store and finding people to play against, doing pickup games or whatever, doing escalation leagues, doing people who go to play tournaments and stuff like that, then you have to stay up with the new stuff, especially tournaments. But even if you're just going to go play, like if you were going to go to the store and play a pickup game of 3rd edition, 40K, good luck. Or even at this point, 8th edition, you might be able to still find people who are like, yeah, I'll play 9th because the 10th just came out. But when your play group changes so frequently, then that becomes, but if you're a group of players who like to play Warhammer and you've been playing 2nd edition or 3rd edition or 5th edition or whatever it is, the edition that the 3 or 4 or 5 of you like, you don't need to change. That's a lot more par for the course, I think, with RPGs, is that you play with a group that you've been playing with for quite some time, generally. If you hop around between groups a lot, then it's a different story altogether. Have to drive 30 minutes to FLGS? Gotcha. I have a bit of a weird question. Are there any museums in Wisconsin that you would recommend? When was the last time I was at a museum? I know there's some nice ones in Milwaukee. There's a couple in Appleton, I think, too. I don't know. I swear to God that there is a paperweight museum in Appleton. I've never been. If you're into paperweights, that might be something to look at. I think there's also a mustard museum too, because I know mustard wasn't invented here, but for some reason there's a mustard museum here in Wisconsin. They just put the first campaign expansion for Horus Heresy: Age of Darkness, so I'd expand. I imagine it's got a year or two left, at least for this edition. Sure, makes sense. Which Snarling Badger game is most noob-friendly? It might be Rain in Hell, because it is not particularly solo or co-op. There's an expansion you can get for it that adds in solo and co-op, but if you're used to just playing a game like against people and stuff like that and having a versus game, I would say it's maybe the simpler. If you're into or want to get into solo play games, then I would look at either Space Station Zero or Majestic 13. Rain in Hell is also the thinnest book we've made so far, because it was like 64 pages, and Space Station Zero is 124, and Majestic 13 is 144. So there's that too, potentially. Tournament scene moves with the meta and the current supported edition. Oh, for sure, for sure. FLGS has almost no stock, though I think because most of us are regulars and we all know that they give 10% off GW prices, we want to order stuff in. Sure. Tons of people go back and play old Warhammer 2nd edition, has a huge following, yeah. We are playing with the old 40K 3rd edition, what we started back in 1998, and I can say the new 40K isn't better than that. In our gaming club, we play with old games. We don't care about FOMO, sure. I've never faulted anyone buying the new editions. Cash register has to ding for a store. My favorite neutral place to play, stay in business, sure. True pickup games are rare. I agree. I know people talk about them all the time, but it's never like... I know I've never just come to the game store and sat there and waited for someone to show up to play 40K. That's never been the case. It's generally more of a thing like you see somebody at the store and you're like, hey, do you want to get together sometime next week and play? Like, yeah, what about this? Okay, cool. And then that's a thing. But a true pickup game where you go and sit down and wait. Magic, different story. I've seen people sitting there by themselves with their Magic stuff ready to go, waiting for someone to come over and start playing Commander. That's totally valid. I get that. But you don't generally see that actually, at least in any of the stores I've ever been to. It doesn't seem to happen with, say, something like 40K. But I have played games against people I don't really know just because I see them when we chat a little bit at the game store and then we get together and then do it later on. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't. Every once in a while you play and you're like, oh, this person's fun and that's nice. And maybe you make a new friend. And then other times you're like, oh, I'm never going to play that person again. I don't want to. That sucked. Does Wisconsin have a cheese museum? It seems like it should. Oh, you know, the coolest museum. Museums may be a strange term. House on the Rock. Definitely, if you get the chance, go to House on the Rock. It's in Spring Green, Wisconsin. House on the Rock is super crazy dope. Yeah, I would definitely check that out. There you go. That's the one. Is Milwaukee a safe city or is it bad in Chicago for crime? I don't think it's as bad as Chicago. There's the Hamilton Wood Type Museum. I'd love to visit if I could get across the pond. Ooh, oh. I heard so much complaining about 4th edition D&D, but my store had a game every weekend. We had fun. Same for tabletop games. I prefer old Battletech, but new makes sales. A lot of people, the people that complained about 4th edition D&D did generally admit that they thought it was potentially the best miniatures game that has ever been made. I had a friend who was deep into RPGs and has been for a long time. And he's like, I didn't like 4th edition. 5th edition is amazing, blah, blah, blah. This is admittedly a little bit closer to the beginning of 5th. I think maybe some people are a little bit disillusioned with 5th now at this point, but that's neither here nor there. But he was like, 4th edition was not a good role-playing game, but it was a really awesome miniature game. And I'm like, okay, well, that's interesting. Closed captioning just corrected Rain in Hell to Raymond Hell. Ooh. My FLGS Warhammer stock dried up when the GW store opened here. Really? That's interesting. Well, I suppose maybe it depends on the size of the city and how many. Like I said, here in town we have two stores, and one is way bigger than the other. I think and has a lot more stuff, but both of them run pretty deep in miniatures and specifically 40K. But one of them runs deep in all kinds of miniatures. I think. I haven't been in there in a while. We had tons of pickup games in the 90s just by hanging out at the gaming store. But you kind of knew those people from the store, or was this like a totally new like person you'd never seen before who happened to walk in with a 2,000 point army and decided also that they're maybe going to be fine? Like, it seems to me, and part of the reason why we were trying to make Game 4 in the first place is that it was hard to get schedules together, especially for adults who are like got stuff going on. You know what I mean? And so you're like, I'd love to play on Wednesday, but I got this going on, or oh, Saturday I got to mow the lawn, or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Last pickup game I played against that guy Tau player at the end of 7th. Gotcha. I ran it every weekend for 5 years at the LGS and every Friday for my home group. Nice. House on the Rock is a heck of a drive from Civilization, but worth it. It's pretty cool. And there's also Taliesin is out there too, which is a big, huge Frank Lloyd Wright built and designed place, which has a sordid history of axe murdering. Just look it up. Let's see here. Just looked into House on the Rock, and now I need to plan a Wisconsin trip. Yeah, if you've ever read American Gods by Neil Gaiman, or Gaiman, whatever. Anyway, House on the Rock is like a decent-sized portion of that book. Raymond Hell is Nick Ramonda's cousin. Whoops, wrong side. Could be. Very possible. Still can't get my head around D&D as a miniatures game in any way. I'm sure it's cool, but it's like imagining 40K is purely dice and paper. 4th edition. The last edition of Dungeons and Dragons, years ago now at this point. 4th edition was you like literally weren't supposed to play the game as like theater of the mind. It was all about having miniatures on the board and moving stuff around and all that stuff. And it was very detailed because you weren't pushing around an army. You were pushing around, I've got this guy, you've got that guy, you've got that guy. The DM is running the orcs over here. And that was how it was done. And from people that I've talked to for years who have played miniatures and RPGs, they were like, yeah, 4th edition was a hell of a miniatures game, but it was a terrible, terrible RPG. Again, I have not played 4th edition. I have played 5th edition. Not in a while, but I have. So I don't have but this is what I've been told by friends of mine who've, been doing this for a long time. So it's interesting. Can you recommend the best way to start for my buddy and I who have never played any tabletop war game? We picked up Leviathan yesterday after a couple of months of watching YouTube videos, but where to start? What I would tell you is, did you each pick up a single box, or did you pick up a box together like you're going to share it? Like one's taking Space Marines, one taking. Either way, whether you each have your own box or whether you decide to split a box, I would tell you to each build a combat patrol from the box. If you go onto the Warhammer community website, you should be able to find the combat patrol data sheets under the download section. And in there will be a section of data sheets for Tyranids and a section of data sheets for Space Marines. And those combat patrols, I don't remember how many there are in the Tyranids list, but I know that the Space Marine combat patrols are only like 12 models. But 5 of them are Terminators, and they're pretty well. 5 of them are regular Terminators, and 2 of them are Terminator leaders, and they're pretty tough. I would tell you to start with that, because then literally that's all you're going to need is to build those models, and then you play it on a smaller board. You need less terrain, but I would start doing a lot of research about Combat Patrol. Combat Patrol uses the same rules as regular 40K, that 60-page rules section that's in the middle of the Leviathan book. You can also download that as a free PDF, not the entire book, just the 60-page core rules part. But yeah, I would start at that. I mean, literally, that's what GW wants to do, is they want you to start at Combat Patrol. If you look through the Leviathan book, there's actually a chart that says how to get into 40K. Start with Combat Patrol, and then either go narrative or competitive. And, it's a whole thing. So, yeah, I would take a look at that. I think Combat Patrol is really a great way to start getting into 40K, if that's what you're going to do. And if you bought a Leviathan box or 2 Leviathan boxes, I can't tell which, but yeah, that's definitely where you want to go. I got some pickup games back in the early 2000s. Or GW was in a big mall back then, and there was lots of staff and many game nights. Sure, I can see that. Like, if there's going to be a game night, then like you're like, okay, Thursday night is the night that we play 40K. Well, then there's going to be more chance of a pickup game to some degree. but it's very frequently also the same people keep coming every week. And so it's even less of a pickup game if it's just like, well, Thursday night's 40K night. I brought my stuff. Everybody who comes generally brings 2,000 points. I'm probably going to find a game. That happens. Yeah, a little bit more frequently. By the time I stopped playing D&D, we had tried Traveler and Gamma World, a TSR game. I'm familiar with both of those. Others in my group wanted to play Laserburn. Laserburn sounds like a name I've heard of, but I don't know much about it. Let's see here. Really don't enjoy Theater of the Mind. That's how I started, but I do prefer, as a miniatures player, I guess, to see a little bit more of a representation of what's going on these days. If I'm going to be playing a role-playing game, which doesn't happen that frequently, I'll be honest. In a lot of ways, 4th edition D&D is the beginning of the thread that led to Gloomhaven. Yeah. No, I could see that for sure. Totally makes sense, yeah. Let's see here. 1 box to switch between armies. That's fine then, yeah. Honestly, I agree that 40K edition, D&D tag. Yeah. Honestly, I agree with that 4th edition D&D tag. I love the skirmishing part of it. Yeah, no, I mean, that sounds kind of cool, actually. I thought Combat Patrol only meant 500 points. Didn't know it had to be specific models. Yeah, the new Combat Patrol is specific models. You buy a Combat Patrol box. If you see them at the store, that's the army, and they will tell you how to build them. Like they'll be like, you give this guy. Now, you could certainly, if you don't care about WYSIWYG, you could totally give this guy a plasma gun because you're going to use him in an army later, and you want him to have a plasma gun. But while you're playing Combat Patrol, he's technically supposed to be shooting a flamer or a melta or whatever. So the idea behind the new Combat Patrol is rather than sitting down and saying to a new person, hey, build a 500-point list. And they're like, I don't even know what you're saying. Where do I find it? Instead, you just go build this box, follow what they tell you to do on this free download, and then you can start playing. So that's the way they do it. Now, like I mentioned earlier, 2 of the current boxes that are out there do give you some options. If you want to play as Custodes, Adeptus Custodes, the big gold guys, or if you want to play as Grey Knights, then you get options because you can't run the entire box at once. It's unequal to the other boxes. It's way too powerful. So with both of those boxes, you get to choose. You get to run these guys and these guys and these guys. You have to run them, but then you either get to do this or this, and you can't do both. Now, if you build both and paint both, then at time to time, you can just switch it up and it gives you some options. Same thing with the Grey Knights. I forget what the option is for the Grey Knights or for the Custodes, but I know with the Grey Knights, you either run this one thing or you run the big Dread Knight, but you can't run both of those things at the same time. So there is a little bit, if you're looking for a little bit of variation, you might want to look at both of those, but the rest of them are just like, there you go, do it that way. So I don't think that's a bad thing. I know some people have been like, no, but I don't want to play that way. Well, then just play a 500-point list. Now, the game, from what I understand, doesn't work great at 500 points, but you could also do 1,000 points where it evidently works better. But if you want to play Combat Patrol these days, you're using the Combat Patrol sheets and you're building them, the boxes the way they tell you to build them. And that's the way they're doing it. Let's see here. Half the absolute failure of Games Workshop is stooping production of older minis, probably stopping, I'm assuming, and previous editions and standalone games. I never finished collecting my 6th edition Warhammer Vampire Counts. I don't know that they're failing. They're the biggest ones out there. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. They do things that people don't like. I'm not going to disagree with that for sure. They do things I don't like. Like, I'm a little annoyed that the Combat Patrol stuff from the Leviathan book is not currently already available as a free PDF. I'm concerned by that. But yeah, I don't know. I think that I also think that they should not be doing a 3-year schedule. I think that at the very least, it should be a 5-year schedule. 6 wouldn't be a bad idea either. So instead of a new edition of 40K every 3 years or a new edition of Age of Sigmar every 3 years, I'd like to see it every 5 or 6. I think that'd be better. But I'm not a business millionaire person, whereas, the people that run that company are, because it's literally a multi-billion-dollar company. And yeah, I'm a bad capitalist, so I'm not the one to ask, I guess. Combat Patrol may be the best incentive to try new armies. Yeah, no, that's also a good point. It's relatively cheap. I've never a Tau player though. There you go. Let's see here. Is the average game of Warhammer 20,000 or sorry, is the average game of Warhammer 2,000 points? A lot of people like to seem to play at that level. I know me and my friends are all playing Combat Patrol, and some of us who are interested may expand to 1,000 points, but that's it. Like, there are 4 main sizes that they talk about in the book, right? There's Combat Patrol, 1,000 point, 2,000 point, and 3,000 point. 3,000 points way too many. I don't want to do that. 2,000 point, that's also way too many for me personally. When you go to tournaments, it'll probably be 2,000 point games. Although I don't know, maybe tournaments will decide everything needs to become 1,500. It always depends on the tournament organizer. So there's that. But for me, yeah, I'm looking at Combat Patrol, maybe 1,000 points. Yeah. Shocking. I got my set of Leviathan at GW with no waiting. Well, that's pretty cool. Let's see here. What do you think GW will do for the chapters they haven't released sheets for? Emperor's Children, Imperial Fists, White Scars, those folks. I don't know. That's a good question. Because yeah, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. Like Imperial Fists, I'm kind of surprised by, you know, even White Scars. I'm sort of surprised there's not anything for Imperial Fists, but maybe down the road they will add some things in. I'm not sure. What I like about Combat Patrol is that the Combat Patrols have a narrative theme. Example, Dark Angel's Combat Patrol is called Mordecai's Judgment. It makes Combat Patrol feel a little bit more alive. Yeah, they all have different names, and like, you know, it is usually named after the leader or whatever, that kind of stuff. Yeah. Totally agree on longer running editions with intermediate tweaks and mini refreshes. That would be great. I agree. Yeah. It's crazy to me that the Crusade rules are now separate or only in the Leviathan box rulebook, not in the new limited edition book. I mean, well, it depends on how cheap the new limited edition, or sorry, it depends on how cheap the new book is, right? So if you're a person, there's a lot of people out there for a while who have been saying, I think this should be 2 games. I think the people who want to play narrative should do this, and I think the people who want to play competitive should do that. And I feel like that's what they're kind of trying to do here. Like, they put both of them into the Leviathan book, but if you don't buy the Leviathan book and you just buy one or the other, now the downside is you need to buy both if you want to play narrative, which I think is a bit of a screw you to the narrative players, unless I'm wrong. Maybe the core stuff is in the narrative book and you don't need to buy the other book. Or, well, honestly, here's the perfectly frank answer for you. If you want to play narrative, just buy the narrative book and then download the 60-page PDF of the core rules. You probably don't need the rest of the stuff in that other book, right? If you want to play narrative. Maybe this is obvious to everyone and I just haven't thought about it enough, but that sounds right to me. So you buy the narrative book and then you download the other thing. I don't know. It seems odd, but either way, I guess I like that they're splitting it, but it depends on whether they make the books cheaper or not. If each of those books is $80, then that didn't help anybody, in my opinion, except for Games Workshop. But I don't know what the price is on those. I haven't looked at the Did the pre-order go live yesterday, or is it going to live next week for those things? I haven't paid close enough attention. Combat Patrol and 1,000 point incursion is the sweet spot for me. Smaller board size and less terrain needed, faster games. Yeah, except that 1,000 points is not on the smaller board anymore. I thought it was. In 9th edition, 1,000 point games were supposed to be played on the 44x30, which is the same size as Combat Patrol. And I thought that was the same thing going forward in 4th edition, or whatever the heck edition, 10th edition. But I looked in the book, and again, I don't have it within arm's reach, but I swear I looked in the book, and it said that 1,000 point games were supposed to be played on a 44x60. Now, you could choose not to. Lord knows, the police aren't going to come. But, yeah, it's one of those things I want to take a look at again, just to be completely sure. But somebody told me, they're like, oh yeah, no, 1,000 points are on 44x60. Because that means that then I got to build 2 board sizes, one for Combat Patrol and one for, 1,000-point games, and that sort of bums me out. Now, on the other hand, if I'm smart, I build two 44 by 30s and figure out a way to make them stick together and look like they go together, and they can be almost modular. That was not the end of the world, but yeah, I don't know. Crusade book is because exactly you could just download the core rules. I looked it up specifically. Well, that's good then. Are the boarding action rules in the core book too? I have no idea. I don't know anything about boarding action. I know that initially when it first came out, it was in like 5 different books and it was hard to find, and I think they've made it easier, but I haven't paid any attention to it. For some reason, there's something about boarding actions I'm not interested in playing. Like the whole concept of going through all those hallways and stuff like that. Like Space Hulk as a game, going through hallways, perfectly makes sense. I'm on board. Playing with a bigger force like that, going through the hallways, doesn't make any sense to me. So that's why I've not really looked into it that much. Another player came out of a hole into daylight surrounded by grassy knolls and opened fire on them because he thought the GM said grassy knolls, not grassy knolls. Oh, right, because of the G versus the K. I get you. Yeah. They said the other chapters are getting their own attachments when a codex releases. Fingers crossed it will also be a free PDF and not locked behind a physical book. Good luck. We'll see. 1,000-point games are full-size table we played last week. See, that's a bummer. I got to be honest with you. In my hobby shop, rulebook is 65, mission cards 38, Tyrannic War book 70. See, that's not also helpful. If you're like, well, we split it up into 2 books, and you're like, yeah, but they're basically about the same price as the one book used to be. That's a bummer. Picking up Leviathan this afternoon, so I'll have to check the board size rules. Yep. Core rulebook does not specify the board size. I swear it did. Well, maybe not the core 60-page thing, the download, but I think I looked in the Leviathan box or book and it said something, but I could be wrong. I could be misremembering. You can play 1,000 on the combat patrol board with the combat patrol missions. The mission packs need larger boards. Should have made it a combat encounter, but the player wasn't getting the message. I think that's in reference to something else. The mission, the only one we have, specifies the battle size. Oh, right. Yeah, that's the thing, too, is that in the specific core rules, there's one mission, which is, yeah, again. They say, oh, look, this stuff's going to be free. And they're like, well, it is technically free. Yeah, sort of. 2 combat patrol boards that are different but can be combined into even 2 different bigger boards. Sounds like an interesting challenge. Well, my thought process was one of 2 things. I was actually thinking about this in the shower this morning. Either you make 2 boards that go together, and one is maybe more, let's say, asphalt and concrete, maybe some cracks and stuff like that. And the other one is maybe more grass or something like that, or even wasteland or something. And then you put something where they touch, and you got that gap now. You put some piece of terrain over that, like a wall that like differentiates the 2 maybe, or a ruined wall or something like that. So A, you don't see the crack between the 2 boards, and B, it kind of makes sense that one is this way and one is that way. That might be kind of cool. I could see doing that. That might be a fun project, a fun like terrain project. I'm trying to think like what buildings I have that would already work for that. Like if you watched last week's video, or this past couple days ago video, Friday's video, which I hope you do, I talk about being able to take terrain ruins, because the ruin rules have changed a little bit, and figuring out how to retroactively, even if you already built and painted your terrain, if it doesn't have a base on it, you can put a base on it for really surprisingly easily. And then that way the terrain rules will show this is how the base, because you have to, basically, if you don't have a base on your terrain for ruins specifically, you and your opponent have to agree what's inside the ruins and what's outside the ruins. And it's a whole thing. So something to think about. But yeah, so that's kind of interesting. So, but if you have a base on it, like say made out of MDF, then boom, you're ready to go. But yeah, I definitely, my plan is to go to like Lowe's and get a 4x8 sheet of plywood, and then they will cut it down for me there, because it will not fit in my car. But if I cut it down, or they cut it down to me for 2 44 by 30s, then I can make 2 combat patrol boards, so you can switch between the 2 of them, or stick the 2 of them together and then make 1 1,000-point game board, which would also be very nice. Yeah. So that's the plan. There you go. Best ideas come from long showers. I think that it just gets your brain wet and then it works better. Actually, there was a scientist or somebody, some sort of psychologist, something, who was like, because you shower so often, anytime you're doing a thing that you do all the time, your brain can think about other stuff because you're not having to think about what you're doing. You know, some people are like, I get my best ideas when I'm washing the dishes or I'm mowing the lawn or something that you've done over and over and over again. And showering, hopefully, is one of those things that you do over and over and over again. And so I think that's part of it, right? Yeah, but the whole concept of shower thoughts, I think, has something a lot to do about how you kind of go in automatic pilot and your brain starts, because I get a lot of my hopefully better ideas very frequently in the shower. All right, folks, it's 11 o'clock here in my neck of the woods. I want to thank everybody for coming by and hanging out today, talking about all kinds of different things. We did talk a lot about 40K. We're going to try to not do that so much maybe next time, but we'll see how it goes. So, yeah, I hope you folks have a good rest of your weekend, unless you're, let's say, in Australia, where I think it's already Monday. So I hope you have a good week. But for those folks who are still in the weekend, I also hope you have a good week coming up as well. Let's see, we should be back again in 2 weeks. There doesn't seem to be any kind of traveling or weird stuff that I have to do, so I should be here, and everything should be fine that way. Tomorrow night on Twitch, push the button, I will be painting again at 7 p.m. Central. Tomorrow night's going to be my 3-year anniversary of hobby streams. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Spoiler alert, there won't be any giveaways. I've never quite figured out how to do giveaways, and it seems like a lot of work, and but maybe I was going to say maybe I'll wear a party hat, but that seems unlikely because it will bang on the camera because the camera hangs down from the ceiling. So that probably won't happen. I'm not sure what'll happen. We'll figure something out. Yeah. So I hope to see you folks again soon. And that's pretty much about it. Have a good day. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.